So from an artist perspective too, like mental health, like I think there's something to the idea that this industry can attract people who have gone through traumatic experiences, right?
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And definitely, I would say my experience, it's attracted a much harder kind of like a lot of people that have been through a lot of shit, basically.
Right.
Like, I very rarely meet a tattoo artist that hasn't been through a lot of shit.
Hi, I'm James Kerr. I'm a tattoo artist, musician, and a trauma survivor. Been on this healing journey for a long time now, and it's led me here talking to you. I enjoy talking about heavy stuff like life, death, spirituality, trauma, and ways to cope with trauma. But it's not all serious. I like to joke a lot too. Welcome to the Fire of Truth podcast. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I'm so pumped that you're here right now. Well, yeah, so let's get the introduction out of the way. Maiah, yes.
Hi.
And for the people who aren't watching on YouTube, which you should be, or you can be, you're on Instagram at Tennyo Tattoo. Do you want to spell that? So
Yeah, it's TENNYO tattoo, all one word.
Got it. Okay, so I spelled it correctly. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So this is going to be the last interview of this season that isn't me. I think next time Ted and Alex are going to interview me for like the season finale of this, and we will have covered everyone in our shop that we work
Nice.
with. Pretty neat,
Sounds like
dude.
fun.
Yeah. But also the last interview in this studio right now.
Yeah. Is it bittersweet for you? Or
Yeah, it is. And you know, my son's moving back in, so that's the sweet part.
That helps.
Yeah, for sure. That's a lot of sweet. Way outweighs the bitter
Yeah, that makes
part,
sense.
you
It's a
know.
good cause.
And then my wife is, yeah, it's an excellent cause. And my wife is like giving me like her home office because she's put in her notice at her job. So now she's starting her own business, and so she's going to be renting an office somewhere else, which is a lot of crazy changes happening in this household right now. So it's all good stuff, but still like, you know, kind of overwhelming. I'm feeling a little like, you know, a bit.
Yeah.
So, but it's all good shit, man. Excitement and anxiety for me are like the same feeling. Yeah. They're like the same circuit, only like interpreted differently in some ways, you know. Yeah, you ready to get into this thing?
Yeah.
All right. So I usually like to start out getting a little bit of history, where, you know, what got you into the tattoo industry to begin with. Like, you can even go as far back as you want. Like how, like you started drawing. How old were you when you started drawing?
Oh, pretty young, probably around like 8 or 9. I really liked drawing a lot. Did
Yeah.
a lot of like art classes. Drew a lot of ugly drawings that I love looking back on.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've always loved art. I've always enjoyed giving it as a gift to people because
Yeah.
it's a nice way to express yourself, and it's like a very, I don't know, like I guess personal gift.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
something that you can kind of make.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you putting yourself on a piece of paper, man, like your inner self kind of comes out on a piece of paper. That's what I love about art. It's like one of those things that even like sometimes that surprises me about what comes out of my head, you know, when it comes to like that kind of stuff too, especially when I was really young. Now it's more so like as a tattoo artist, I'm like, you know, doing things that other people want to do. So I'm kind of like trying to like almost be like a psychic, right? Like we have to kind of like extract what their vision and interpret it through our style, you know, and that's,
Yeah. It's a very like almost like a gift giving form
Yeah.
of art.
yeah, exactly.
It's kind of the aspect that I like, even though I like doing my own stuff too.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to have a balance of that if I have time. Doing
Yeah.
art for myself helps like counteract burnout, I think,
I
sometimes.
agree. Yeah.
Not that I don't love doing art for other people.
No.
But it is something that you have to pay a lot of attention to exactly what they're asking for. So, you know.
Well, what got you into the tattoo industry? Obviously, you were drawing all your life,
Yeah.
and then that led you into NorCal. That's essentially what I'm asking. Like, how did you get to NorCal?
Well, I got into the tattoo industry technically through kind of like a religious culty school.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah. My pastor at the time, his tattoo artist, was looking for an apprentice, and he was like, "Oh, he mentioned that to me and asked if I was interested because I was always drawing on all my classmates, and I was like, yeah, I'd love to." Yeah, and definitely did not end up staying associated with that school. Kind of a little bit
Culty,
about
like
it
you said. Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah, it was not, yeah, it's not something I really want to be associated with, which is probably offensive to some people, but ultimately
Yeah.
it just wasn't the path for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. I love the phrase that all rivers lead to the same ocean.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We all have our own paths, but we're all going to the same place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
But it always is awkward when people were like,
Yeah.
how did you get into this? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, the
Yeah.
church. Like, I'm not, like, still religious in any way.
Right.
Not that I have anything against religion.
no,
But, I mean,
I
obviously
do.
I know a few things, but
I mean,
ultimately I'm like, hey, if it floats
Yeah.
your boat, and as long as you're not hating on other people, screaming in their face that they're going to go to hell, like, as long as you're not, like, if you come from a place of love, I can accept you
absolutely.
wherever your path is.
Right.
But yeah, no, so I went to that guy. He told me to come back with an art portfolio. I came back with an art portfolio, and then I did a 3-year apprenticeship. I
yeah.
didn't start tattooing till the last year. I was very, very, I guess, perfectionistic about my art, so it probably took me a long time.
Right.
I was going through, after the recent fire I had below our apartment, I had to go through all my old stuff. And there was like trash bags, like contractor size trash bags of art that I was like, damn, I would do the same draft of something like 50 to 100 different times.
Right.
Just over and over and over. This is before iPads, of course.
Right.
But now I'm like so grateful for iPads.
I love iPads.
Probably
Oh my God.
saved an entire forest or
I think
two.
the forest loves iPads too. Yeah.
So much trash. But I mean, I was just really determined to get it right. And honestly, like, it's funny too, because at the end of it, I look at my flash sheets and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's what hundreds of times drawing that design came out to. That's disgusting.
I think that's good though. That's
Yeah.
a good thing because that means your ability to see has outweighed your previous skill level, right?
Well, yeah, that's just
Yeah.
growth in
Yeah,
general. You
yeah.
gotta suck at something to get good at it.
Oh God, I should show off some of my scratcher tattoos. I still have. Ooh, maybe after this filming, I'll show you because they're right in that toy box right there.
That one?
That yep, that is that toy box I had growing up as a kid, and I wrote. Speaking of being religious, He is Lord. He is risen, or something. I love Jesus. I love God is on the side of that somewhere too.
Oh, yeah. That's classic. You have to have that written somewhere if you grew up religiously.
Yeah, right next to all my Bibles and shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So many Bibles.
yeah, man, I was tattooing someone yesterday, and they were like, "Yeah, I'd never read the Bible." I'm like, I've read it many times. You know?
Yeah, probably front to back.
Yeah.
Through
And
a few times.
had to memorize a lot of verses, a lot of scripture. Man.
Yeah.
No, that really, like, I think being raised religious in that sense, like, for me wasn't good for my mental health, wasn't good for my ability to, like, to see any kind of self-worth, you know? And I think that kind of leads me to this next question. And I still want to kind of backtrack real quick. So what was getting your job at NorCal Tattoo like? Like, how did that unfold?
I had gone through one or two not so great shops and had a little bit of trauma there.
Right.
Quite a bit, actually, where it was just kind of like very lowering to my self-esteem. And I was super, super heartbroken because I love tattooing. And,
You're
yeah,
like almost giving up on the idea?
No, never giving up, but just like not knowing how I was going to continue because there's not a shit ton of shops in the area that are, especially reputable shops.
Right.
And when I had been fired, it was definitely from the last shop. It was like over weird, like ego tripping, needing to control my art kind of stuff. So I definitely felt like there was something wrong with me, but I was like, but I know I'm not doing anything wrong. Like, I'm just tattooing and trying to do my best.
Right.
So it was really like confusing to me when when you're doing your best, it's always confusing when things don't work out, but it was for the best.
Absolutely.
And
I think so. I get to work with you.
Yeah, no, I'm super grateful for where I ended up.
Yeah.
I'm super grateful for that hard path. I definitely, so I was like on a trip to go see my family in the interim of being fired, and was super sad. I was applying to as many shops as I could. And I think there was like a 15-minute delay of my plane landing. And I was like, oh, I'm going to shoot one last, because I was applying to a bunch of shops in Eureka first, but I was like, I'm
Because
gonna,
you lived there, right? You lived in
yeah, at the time. So I was like, I'm gonna shoot one last email out to the shop in Arcata, just as one last. I was like, I guess since I'm sitting here, I might as well. And Amy was really quick to get back to me within a couple days, and was like, yeah, let's talk when you get back. I was like, fuck,
Oh,
yes,
you got
finally.
Amy.
Oh,
Good.
Amy's so sweet.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
so grateful
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like nobody wanted to give me a shot.
Right.
Like I'd even talked to Jeremy at one point, like the guy that worked for them that opened a different shop.
Yeah.
And I think there was like this level of like, we don't really know you, and we don't really,
Right.
you know, nobody really wants to give an opportunity to somebody, even if your art's good, I guess. I don't know.
But do you think, I mean, there's like this whole thing, at least in the old school days of the industry, of like not it being male dominated. It still is male dominated, but I think like a lot of female energy has come into the industry, and I know it, especially at our shop. And it's fucking, in my mind, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say I commend NorCal for that, because I think they're willing to give a lot of people a chance.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously if that chance doesn't work out, that's on them.
Yeah.
But that's all I needed was
Yeah.
like a chance to be like, hey, I'm a very hard worker. I
Yeah.
love what I do. Like,
Yeah.
just give me the opportunity to tattoo, and I'll bring you everything
You've been
I
there
can.
for how long now? Couple
I
years?
want to say over 2 years,
Yeah.
maybe 2, 3-ish. I can't really remember.
It's not. Numbers aren't our job.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Probably at least 2 years.
Time, what is time? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would, okay, thank you. That's great. I think that's a good, like, kind of like background from where you come from and how you got to where you are now too. I think a lot of people can resonate with that. Like, I definitely can. Like, trying to even get my apprenticeship was, like, I was no everywhere I went was no. And then there was one dude that said, eh. And that was like all I needed to hear. And I was like, how did you get into the industry? He's like, I kicked the fucking door down. I was like, is that what I need to do? How do I kick? What door do I kick down? Like, yeah. Like,
You know, it's an interesting concept, because you know how you said it's hard for men versus women in the industry. I think it's actually harder for guys to get in the door than for women, because I feel like, at least for me, like when I was younger, and this used to bug me sometimes, was the concept that when I was younger, very pretty, that kind of like, you know, it was easy to at least get in the door, because, you know, somebody's like, well, you're an attractive young female. Of course I want you around. I don't want
Right.
you as competition, but I
Right.
want you as somebody working for me. But then that always like gave me this complex of like, well, I'm working really hard. Does that mean I'm only being seen for
Your
my
looks,
physicality,
right.
or, you know, because I really wanted to just be seen for my art. And I remember starting out as a woman, that was definitely something that was told to me a lot. Like,
Interesting.
oh, you know, if I was a young, pretty woman, I'd be dancing naked in the window to draw in customers, which is definitely not my vibe.
No.
But I was like, am I fucking up by not using my youth and attractiveness to like get further in the industry? However, I think later on I realized, like, you know, looks fade and your art doesn't. Your
Right.
art potential is going to
Could
be
get better and
something-
better and better.
Exactly, and that's what's gonna last. That's what people are gonna remember.
Right.
Especially if you draw them in with looks, like they're gonna expect something from you, and if you don't provide that, they're gonna move on.
Right.
Is that really the clientele you want?
No.
So
Right.
I actually do think that sometimes, like, there's pros and cons of being
Sure.
a woman in the industry versus a dude. Because for dudes, it'd be hard to fucking get an
Yeah,
opportunity.
I mean, I don't have any cleavage.
yeah, yeah, you can walk in the door and be like, I'm cute. I'm
Yeah,
young.
I mean, I dance around the shop, but no one like I'm not good at it. But I still do it.
Yeah.
But not to like attract any like new customers. That's a good point. That's a good perspective. I hadn't really thought about it. And I like immediately was like thinking about like Twitch streamers, people on Twitch. A lot of like the complaints and the excuses that people use for why they don't have a big following. I was like, well, I don't have tits, you know. Like they
I'm not attractive.
they
Yeah.
scapegoat their inability to market themselves on things that they can't control, such as like the attractiveness of other women on the platform, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, if it's working for them, why the fuck not, right? And
Yeah, to each their own.
It's a different story when you're trying to build a reputation on a foundation of artistic ability.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's a way stronger foundation, like you said, because looks do fade. They come and go, and like your art ability, I'm just seeing it getting better and better and better. Like since I started working there again, it's yeah. That's very wise. I see wisdom there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I definitely do think about that sometimes. So regardless what gets you in the door, what you do after that point is kind of like that's on you, basically. Like the hard work you put in, the way you market yourself, the way you work on your art, that's definitely what's going to last, that foundation.
Yeah, you hear that? It's good advice. Hi, this is James. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube right now, do me a huge favor and give it a like and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to whatever platform you listen to podcasts on, you could rate it, you could review it, share it with a friend as well. That would help me out a lot. Either way, thank you very much. So I know we kind of had this pre-interview thing, and I am really excited about talking about mental health in the tattoo industry.
Yeah.
You ready to go to that? Let's get deep. Where are we at time-wise? Oh, shit, yeah. That's exactly how I wanted to spend that time. So we'll have a discussion. Like, you can ask me questions, too, like that kind of thing, too. But I think we'll start off with, what does mental health, and I'm using air quotes, look like in the tattoo industry today? Like, how does that... Do you see a difference the way we talk about it or approach it now compared to the way it used to be?
I think so. I think more and more people are starting to realize that tattoos have a therapeutic aspect to them. And it's kind of interesting because there's like two sides of it.
Right.
The tattoo artist side and the client side, But ultimately, I think tattoos are a great way to express your autonomy and processing through. I mean, it's weird because it's traumatizing to you. It's a trauma we choose. I mean, like you've even mentioned, it's almost like working out, like kind of causing trauma to your body, but ultimately it pays off in a way that you're building muscle by like tearing muscle. Isn't that what you said one time? Yeah.
And tattooing is somebody recently said something to the effect, but I can't remember where I heard it, or maybe I came up with it. I don't know, but it's like, you are learning how to deal with pain from a perspective of safety when you get a tattoo. Yeah. And it's a great training ground for that. And the same can be applied to emotional experiences too, right? Like, so, yeah. And it is, I love how you said, like, it's a way for us to help people in their autonomy, because we are helping them express themselves, right? Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it is interesting because, like, I don't know, I've struggled my entire life with self-harm. And I remember when I was in my apprenticeship, I mentioned that to my mentor, and he was like, hey, next time you're struggling with that, you can just come in and tattoo yourself. Yeah. And I was like, fuck, I never really thought about that. Exactly. Granted, I never took him up on it. However, that idea of like, you can do something beautiful with your pain rather than causing scars that you want to cover up later was kind of an interesting thought for me. And I don't know, sometimes I think that'd be cool to get to help people with in that process. I don't know, like covering self-harm scars. I was just going there. Yep. Yeah. That's never something I want anybody to ever feel ashamed about, because it's like, I don't want to say we all have them, but I know I do. I know I struggle with that, and I've struggled with that. So I don't know, sometimes people are kind of nervous or like, will this, and granted, tattooing scars is something that, you sometimes need a touch up. The skin is like one of those things that you never know exactly how it's going to heal. Right. However, I do tell people like, hey, touch-ups are free. We can do this. We can make this into something beautiful, So that is something that I think is near and dear to my heart, at least, just because I understand that struggle. So from an artist perspective too, like mental health, like I think there's something to the idea that this industry can attract people who have gone through traumatic experiences, right? Yeah. Do you see that? Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. It definitely, I would say, my experience, it's attracted a much harder kind of like a lot of people that have been through a lot of shit, basically. Right.
Like, I very rarely meet a tattoo artist that hasn't been through a lot of shit.
Right. Yeah. Same.
And it is interesting because I think it's almost similar to like parenthood, how like each generation causes trauma to the next generation.
Yeah. It's
but the next
generational.
generation's trying to fix it a little bit, but still fucking up.
Yep.
I think that I definitely see that in the industry where like
That's
you
a good
went through a
point.
very traumatic apprenticeship, and in your apprentices beyond you,
Yeah.
you're only traumatizing some a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. From like trying to do it from like a place of humor too, you know. And as long as he's smiling, I'm feeling okay. Like I'm not abusing him, you know. But even from a joking perspective, though, it can still be like traumatizing, and to some degree too. It's like, you know, but laughter is the opposite of trauma, like playfulness and that kind of thing. So that's kind of like, you know, canceling out a little bit of it. And fuck, dude, like even yesterday I was like, yeah, man, I'm not gonna make you or what did I say? He's been like super whippy with his comebacks lately. I said something to the effect of pulling a cherry out of my butt or not making him do that, and he was like, "Are you sure?" Like, you know, like calling my bluff. He's learned to call my bluff. So.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think there's a healthy level, but also like there's that level too where I think sometimes the earlier generations of tattoo artists see the next generation not have to struggle as much, and sometimes I think there's that question of like, well, are they earning where they're at?
Right.
And it's like kind of a fine line.
It is,
you know, because I definitely do think in my experiences, a lot of the older generation tattoo artists want to like keep the next generation down by like insulting them, talking trash on them, like, you know, just to like try and keep their egos in check.
Right.
And to a degree, I'm like, well, I respect that you've paid your dues and you've gone through shit when shit was much harder than what I've gone through. At the same time that shit talking me and putting me down, it's not very healthy.
No.
And it's kind of tricky,
right?
That area where it's like I get where they're coming from at the same time, because I also get it. If you're like a tattoo artist or an apprentice that never has to clean or never has to go through shit, like, are you just taking for granted where you're at?
Right. And that's part of the like, from an economic standpoint, part of the exchange that you are getting. Like if you're not paying, some artists will charge like 10 grand for an apprenticeship, and if you pay that money, then like traditionally you get treated better, right?
Yeah, you don't have to clean the toilets.
Yeah,
and
all
answer
of that.
Phones.
So the exchange here is like, here's a career that you can take anywhere in the world for a year or two of grinding it out by mopping, sweeping, that kind of thing, right? So there's an economic kind of, the currency is time on both the mentor and the apprentices. And in the weirdness of like the way the tattoo industry has been of hazing the apprentice, for me, from my perspective, it's just like being a parent, like you were saying. Like, I don't want to pass down the trauma. I spent my entire life working on my mental health so that when I had a kid, I didn't beat the shit out of him for everything. And I got to say, he's 24 now, and I didn't beat the shit out of him. I was good. So he had it better than I did. And that's what I think is supposed to happen. If evolution is if we're trying to evolve as a species, not just as an industry, but as a species, we want to learn from the mistakes that were made and try not to repeat them. Because guess what? We're going to make plenty of our own mistakes. If, you know, and one of them, you know, with my son, and I've said this before on this podcast too, was he was like 4 years old and I was tickling him. And I have a hard time, especially when I was in my mid-20s, which is actually when he was 4, I was probably like 28, something like that. So late 20s. And I was tickling him. I don't know when to stop. He was super overstimulated. And I remember the point where his eyes just went bang. And then he like kicked me in the face.
Oh, shit.
And then I went immediately across his face. Yeah. And he like completely like lost his shit, understandably, started crying, ran to his room and closed the door. And I was like, immediately I was like, oh my God, I'm my dad. Like, you know, like that was the only time I ever hit him. And it was super, like I hadn't even thought it through. It was just impulse went out of control.
Yeah, it was like a base reaction, which happens when you're a traumatized person.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, somebody hits you, I mean, even if it's accidental, somebody smacks you, you smack them back.
Yeah.
And that's it's unfortunate because it's like we try so hard not to pass on those traumas.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I've struggled with a little bit of jealousy towards people that don't have fucked up self-esteems.
Yeah. It must be nice.
It must be nice to not have a traumatized childhood, both in the industry and in just life in general.
Yeah.
Like I remembered having friends that like didn't have any trauma in their childhood, and I was like, wow, what is that like?
I know.
Like I don't understand, and it just, same with the industry a little bit. I think it's hard for people to see. And okay, so that's another question that I have sometimes is what is the line between unearned confidence and just competence? You know what I mean? Because sometimes I think it goes a little far, and I see like straight up scratcher level tattoo artists being like, I'm so great, I'm wonderful. And I'm like, I fucking have busted my ass, but sweat and tears into my thing, and I'm still struggle with my imposter complex. So when I see them walking up all confident, like, look at me, I'm amazing, and their shit is dog shit.
Right.
I'm like, wow. Like on one end, I kind of admire their confidence, and on the other hand, I'm like, but they're not competent.
Exactly.
So it's such a weird
there's a couple of things that came to my mind when you asked that, because that's a great question. Where's the line between like unearned competence, which is ego, right? And then what did you say? Competence. Like,
so unearned confidence.
Confidence.
And
great.
then just earned
competence. Yeah. So earned competence is more, I think, I'm gonna try to define this. Earned competence means you know enough to know what you don't know, right? Like that, like that, where your strengths and your weaknesses are, and you know how to work on your weaknesses and increase your strengths by doing that. I think that it's knowing enough to know that you don't know shit. It's kind of what wisdom is, right? Like, I think and this unearned competence comes from what's called, I think, the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Where basically, let me just try to define it here real quick. And this is great. This is a fucking good question. Definition of Dunning-Kruger effect. A cognitive bias that occurs when people with low knowledge or skills in a certain area overestimate their own abilities.
Oh.
Right. So that's a couple of psychologists that came up that coined that phrase, and they just don't know enough to know that they don't know. Right. And so that's where that unearned confidence comes from. It comes from that. And that's what's blocking them from actually getting better is the fact that they don't think they need to. Right. Because they haven't gotten, and they won't listen. They haven't dropped their guard, and they won't listen to outside influence. Right. And to humble themselves. And sometimes I think to cross that threshold between the two, it takes some sort of like life event. And I went through it. I talk about it too. I've talked about it here on the podcast about when I was like, I owned my own shop and my ego went, woo! And people would be like, oh, you could do this better. You could do that better. And I was like, fuck you. I'm the boss. Right. I'm the shit, like, that was the Dunning-Kruger effect. I had no fucking clue. I'd never owned a shop before, nor did I work in any other shop besides the one that I apprenticed at. Yeah. So, I mean, in my own defense, I felt like I had a lot of unresolved trauma, for one, and I didn't even really, I knew it, but I didn't have the language for it. And two, I because of that, I felt like I had to, like, adopt this role that I wasn't really made for, which is being a boss. And the only example I had for what a boss was my dad, who was a fucking asshole.
Okay, so it's kind of like playing a role almost.
Absolutely.
And I sometimes wonder that if sometimes it's possible that it comes from insecurity as well, of being like, well, I need to portray, like, I know my shit and nobody can tell me otherwise, because otherwise I'll look incompetent. And it's just like, well, it's a human thing to admit that you still have room to grow, or that you have imposter syndrome, right? Like that. So one of my coaches told me the only people that don't have imposter syndrome are imposters. That's
I love that, dude. It's so true.
It makes me feel a lot better about my imposter syndrome.
It just means you want to be better.
Yeah, no,
That's
this
all.
makes sense. And I mean, you are going to go through, especially like I said, in this industry where sometimes people are going to kind of tear you down to try and like keep your ego in check. Because even if you're doing good, they're going to be like, well, don't get a big head on yourself. Your art's shit. Nobody likes it.
Yeah.
And I definitely struggled with that for a while. Like the kind of style of art that I like was kind of treated as like, it's not tattooing. It's like, it's fucking silly little girl shit.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's funny because it eventually found its audience.
Right.
And, you know, I have a lot of clientele that really like it. And that's always kind of baffling to me is that for a long time, I was just like literally treated like my shit was just,
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it, just not, it was pathetic in the tattoo
Yeah.
industry. So it's interesting. And then you like eventually learn like, no, people actually like this style. People actually like the stuff that I want to draw.
Right.
And that really helps.
It takes determination and stick-to-itiveness to be able to do that when people are saying no. I think people are in general like cautious around new ideas,
Yeah.
right? So when like if you think about like the way like new inventions or anything, at first people say you're crazy, it can't be done, and then after it's done, they're like, oh, why didn't we do it sooner? You know what I mean? Like it was just kind of shift this shift in culture is what it is. It's culture.
No, that totally
Right.
makes sense. And they only know what they know works. And when they see somebody trying something else out, I'm sure there's this level of like, well, that doesn't work. You shouldn't try it. But it's like, well, how do you know?
Right.
Until you really put your full effort in.
Right.
Because if you half-ass it and it flops on the floor, it's like, well, you kind of half-assed it. So
Yeah.
of course it didn't succeed.
Right.
So I think having that opportunity to get to try new things, I definitely felt like I had that when I came to NorCal. Like I wasn't really stifled with my art.
Right.
I wasn't told I was only allowed to do one style,
Right.
which had happened at the last shop. One style, four colors only, and a particular size needle was what I
Right.
was limited to at the end of my last shop, and it was ridiculous. And palm size are smaller, and I had to get permission for every tattoo I did, and
yeah.
it led to a massive loss of work,
Yeah.
as well as a loss of growth. But I was able to grow within those parameters to just be like, I can still fucking do this.
Yeah.
And then eventually, at NorCal, where I was allowed to just do whatever I wanted, I was finally able to show like, no, this shit really works. People really want like my art, which is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, dude, you have a wonderful niche or niche or niche.
I think niche sounds right.
Yeah,
I don't know. I could be wrong. But
I had this argument with people before, not people, my buddy Jake, who's in, shout out to Jake from Gray Bush, my old band, and they're still going, they're still rocking. But is it niche or is it niche? I don't know.
I
Maybe.
always thought it was niche, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
'Cause-
I've heard both ways. In any case, though, it's like I really like your style, and I want to show. And I think in the beginning of this video, if you're not watching, if you're listening, you can go to YouTube and see this, and you'll also be able to see her work on Instagram too. But I'm gonna throw up, if you don't mind, giving me after this like 4 different tattoos that you want me to like fling
yeah,
up
yeah,
on the
I'll throw
video.
you.
Yeah.
I forgot to do that before, but I will try to.
Yeah,
remember
I
that
forgot
tonight.
to ask too. So yeah.